That's DKP & Co Chartered Accountants.
Maloney takes, and it's in! It's Ben Watson! It's Ben Watson for Wigan Athletic! They've surely won the FA Cup! For Dave Whelan, for Roberto Martinez! You just cannot write scripts like this!
Whether you're a land developer, in local government or a service authority, Lenco Group will help you get your job done on time and in a cost-effective manner. Lenco Group provides superior civil engineering and advisory services by creating, communicating and delivering sustainable, efficient solutions. For all your infrastructure requirements associated with residential, commercial or industrial development projects, visit our website lencogroup.com.au or give us a call today on 1300 152 626.
Are you looking to change your destiny in life? Be your own boss? Start your own business? If you are, you need people who understand your needs and are committed to helping you make it happen. At DKP & Co Chartered Accountants, we are more than just accountants. We are business advisors, taxation consultants and strategists that specialise in setting up businesses. We understand the client and give them the very best customised advice and strategies to achieve their goals. Visit our website dkpco.com.au or give us a call today on 03 9023 9370. Fast, proactive, personal. That's DKP & Co Chartered Accountants.
Vickery looking to build. Barbarouses is quick. Is he in behind Topo Stanley? It doesn't matter! Costa Barbarouses! Wow!
Like a salmon, a spawning salmon! And Diamante again! Oh, he's done it!
Unbelievable kick. Mamma mia.
Well, whoever said the revolution will not be televised, they were telling you a lie, because the revolution of Australian football kicked off this weekend with round one of the A-League men's season. And like I said, they lied when they said the revolution wouldn't be televised. But what they didn't mention, the truth is, the revolution will only partially be televised, as round one of the league that we know and love here in Australia, the A-League men's, did get underway. Warts and all, taking you through it on the Oz Football Hour will be myself, Lachlan Flannigan, and Josh, whose screen doesn't feature a blue spinning wheel of death, so that's an improvement on the weekend. Josh Parish, how are you?
I'm doing well, Lockie, and it was Gil Scott Heron, for the record. He said the revolution will not be televised.
I always thought it was Anderson .Paak, so thanks for clearing that one up. Well, Josh, a huge weekend in so many respects, both good and bad. In many ways, the league has changed forever. It will never be the same, and in a lot of ways, it is also very much the same.
Plus ça change, plus ça reste, as they say in France.
Yeah, exactly.
The more things change, the more they stay the same. We got a week one of the league, and of course, the new streaming platform had a few technical hiccups. They're not alien to us here at FNR, but dealing with considerable more resources over there at CBS Viacom. So it was a bit disappointing to see the Westgate derby in Geelong televised with only one camera for most of the game, with some parts of it not shown at all, with audio sync and video issues, with blue spinning wheels of death, with multiple match day streams that were difficult to navigate, and some action not being shown. It doesn't really instill you with much confidence, and I don't think new viewers to the A-League would have been particularly enthused by what they saw on the streams. On the pitch, a mixed bag.
Yeah, well, shall we get straight into that mixed bag of games? We'll go right into the first one. Melbourne City, of course, the reigning champions of the A-League, not necessarily looking like it on Friday night, but getting the win over Brisbane Roar nonetheless by a margin of 2-1. As I said, it was a very interesting game for Melbourne City. Of course, so much expectation on them this season to just go back-to-back and continue to waltz blissfully through the park as they did at times last season in the A-League men's. But Brisbane did not let them have it all their own way in this game, Josh.
No, they did not, and I didn't expect them to. I had them third in our A-League preview last week. I'm feeling, despite the result, quite vindicated by their performance, especially on the hour mark where Warren Moon made that change and brought in Luke Ivanovic up front. I don't think Mile Uznic really did himself a whole lot of good with his performance, didn't improve his stocks, but Luke Ivanovic, who didn't see much football at Sydney FC but looked promising in the minutes that he did, looked very, very impressive. And that midfield, Akbari, O'Shea, Matty Steinman, seems to have a really good mix of attributes. I like the setup. I like the way Brisbane have gone about things, slightly under the radar, but giving youth a chance and really putting some key pillars in key areas such as central defence and especially central midfield. They look pretty sharp. They've got, I would argue, one of the best coaches in the league. Maybe not one of the most well-credentialed, but certainly the coach I'm most excited about. And Forza Barcelona, Forza Warren Moon.
Forza Barcelona, indeed. Of course, Josh, if you can't already tell, is a pretty heavy investor in raw coin. We are early stage investors, and we welcome those who aren't yet on board to maybe buy a few stocks, because that was the weird thing about this game, is that it, as much as it did end with 3 points to Melbourne City, as many would have expected and predicted beforehand, in a weird sort of way, they were the team that almost comes away from this game being more disappointed. Like, I feel like Brisbane were the more buoyed. And even that first half, like a lot of the analysis from the Paramount Plus team was about how it was this tale of two halves, game completely flipped on its head. And I think that Brisbane did approach the game a little bit more cautiously than we expected. Of course, they've got a pretty difficult schedule in the sense they had to do like a fly in, fly out situation to and from Melbourne, and they'll have to be back here before too long as well. So it's pretty hectic for them. But, a lot of the analysis was that, well, City dominated that first half. And I think maybe there was an element to which dominance of the ball or dominance of the game was confused with dominance of the ball, because City did have a lot of the possession. They did control the proceedings of that first half, but I didn't feel like they always did a lot with it. And I think, that star-studded front three in particular still looks like it's going to need a bit of time to fire.
If you look at the attributes of those front three players, the star power, Jamie McLaren, of course, top scorer in the league last season by an absolute mile. Andrew Naboot obviously has plenty of caps for the national team, plenty of pedigree. Matt Leckie, of course, the big name coming back to Australia. All three of those guys can definitely score goals, have pedigree, have big match experience, and probably come with pretty big price tags. But you look at the attributes of all three, and they're mainly their pace and their power. The strength of Naboo and Leckie, McLaren playing off the shoulder, spacing behind, they will kill you. And obviously with these set pieces, City are very dominant off those, and any second balls and scraps, McLaren's usually in the right place and the right time to score. But City are playing with a ball-dominant philosophy, which is imposed from above, from the CFG. And it's not as if they're going to completely change their style to accommodate these guys. So I think there's a bit of a fit issue between what City are trying to do and what the players in that front line are best suited to. And having most of the ball won't necessarily benefit them this season.
Well, yeah, I mean, you touched on a good point there. Any team that affords City a space in behind will inevitably find themselves one goal down. I mean, not necessarily the case in this game. Melbourne City took a 2-goal advantage in the first half through, a set piece and a slightly fortuitous deflection for Connor Metcalf that, probably is going wide of the post if it doesn't take a touch off a defender. But Brisbane let City have the ball, but they didn't let them have that space. And City, it was honestly sometimes that second half, or the first half rather, it felt a bit like watching a game on a loop, because City would just launch these same, I don't know if you noticed it, but like it was very heavily reliant on like pattern play, like repeating these same patches of pattern play where we've got the central midfielder that's sliding across to help, an overlapping fullback and a winger. And if we can't find a cross from this angle, then we're going back to to the defensive midfielder and were trying the same triangle on the other side. And, as much as they did have a lot of ball in those pockets of space, a lot of it ended in either crosses or, if it was at the feet of Andrew Naboo, who didn't have a great game, crosses,
wild speculative
crosses that
shots.
ended up being shots. Like I saw people saying, why does he keep shooting from impossible angles? No, he's not shooting. He's trying,
He has scored from that position before.
Of course, but he's not, when you think he's shooting from improbable angles, he's not shooting. He is trying to cross.
Messing up a
it
cross.
just goes a bit flat.
What did you think of Patrick Kisnorbo's signal to switch the play? Just both arms looked like he was trying to start a YMCA, but no one was joining in.
If the coaching career, he's just started, pretty well, and hopefully started as he means to go on. But if it does go downhill, he's got a good career lined up for him as sort of like I don't know what the extra sort of umpires would be in the NFL, but just signaling field goal, just all clear, doing that sort of thing.
I think clear communication is important on the touchline. It's also important when you're trying to organise who you're going to the game with, Lockie.
Yeah, well, brings us on to another very important point. City do get the 3 points in the end and think they'll be disappointed with the way that they played that game, in the sense they could have been a lot better, but I think it was clear that there's a bit of, it sounds crazy to say this about, when we've had such a long off-season, but a bit of rustiness, still a few integration issues to sort out with the Socceroos that, again, have had a bit of travel to do as well. So City will get a lot better than that game, and I think they'll have to be to sort of, continue to push themselves up. But really the bigger disappointment was, for me, and I say this as someone with quite a strong connection to Melbourne City, was the crowd. It ended up, I think, somewhere in the region of 7,231, somewhere in that region,
Somewhere
of a
in
very
there.
specific number. But as Josh brought us onto, it could have been one more. And I'm going to throw one of my relatives under the bus here, specifically my father. It could have been a crowd of 7,232, but for the absent-mindedness of my father. Now, I live in South Yarra, so this is only a fairly recent thing. I can walk down to the game.
Must be nice.
From Amy Park. Very
Must be
nice.
very
It was a
nice.
nice little 30-minute stroll down. I could see Amy Park in the distance. I thought, God, what a great day I'm going to have walking down to the football, meeting my father at the game. I rang him a few times because usually he works in the city. He might be a little bit late, doesn't always pick up the phone because he's working. And I thought, well, that's all right. He usually turns up at about kickoff. I'll figure out where I'm going to meet him, because obviously you don't just go in with your membership and sit in the same seat. It's a bit different at the moment. And I started to cross the bridge over the Yarra. I could see that the lights of Amy Park are right there staring me in the face. I can hear the noise of the crowd, the suspension, the
6,000
tense.
strong.
The tension is building. And I think, okay, I've got to give my dad another call. And I ring him up. And I say, oh, hey, man, I'm just on the other side of Amy Park, just on the Yarra side. Where
You
should
call
I...
your dad, man.
Where should I do?
Okay.
Don't question it. Don't question it. I'm trying to get through the anecdote here,
Okay.
Josh. You know how hard that is for me. I said, where should I meet you at the other end of Amy Park? And he says, what are you talking about? My dad had forgotten the game was on. The game that he organised tickets to, he forgot was happening. And the reason he wasn't picking up his phone wasn't because he was at work. It was because he was mowing the lawn. So I was stood up by my own father and watched this game by myself. So disappointing crowd for City. The champions of the A-League men's only pulling in 7,200. I know there's still a bit of a COVID hangover for some people, but you really thought they could have done a bit better than that. And the main person to blame is my father, who stood me up on Friday night at Amy Park.
So young boy Lachie Flannigan left in the lurch, stood up, and young boy Marco Tilio left on the bench.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be some clamour for this boy, who we will hear from tonight on the station. Lachie, this might actually be news to you. But just today, I had confirmation that the Football Revolution with Gio and Jules is going to be back. Coming up tonight, 9 p.m. time slot going forward on Tuesday nights. So it's audio only through the app, and it'll be on our podcast platforms as well.
You mean to tell me that Melbourne City young gun and king of serial empire Tilios will be on this very station?
Yes, indeed. Marco Tilio, the face of the new video clip for the A-League.
The serial baron.
Here come the future.
Watch
So
out, Kellogg's.
Look forward to that coming up at 9 p.m. But Lockie, we should move on to Saturday's fixtures. 2 games, 1 goal, and an inauspicious beginning to the Saturday night double kickoff on Channel 10.
Yeah, I mean, which game do you really start with? I mean, I guess you should theoretically be switching between the two, but easier said than done, as many learnt on the weekend. Well, I think we'll start with Sydney, because we were, of course, at the game over in Geelong on the weekend. The derby, it ended up 0-0. The main talking point for me, Josh, is something that we touched on in our A-League men's season preview last week. The balance of this midfield is just so crucial for Western Sydney. The players that Carl Robinson puts in certain positions is just so important to how this team performs relative to their ceiling. And what you were clamouring for was that Antonis, the sort of axis of dreams, the Antonis and Ugarkovic partnership. And you got your wish.
Yeah.
Did Western Sydney deliver in this game for you with that midfield combination?
Well, clearly not. I felt it was a cautious outing from both sides. We've got such a long off season. I don't think there's really any excuse for not being prepared week one, but both these teams looked kind of out of sorts and rusty. I was disappointed that Burgess didn't start for Sydney. I was disappointed that Petratos seemed to be so central to so much of Western Sydney's build-up play. I think the way to use him is to basically put him on a flank and get him to deliver the ball into the box. That's what he does best, because he's a phenomenal dead ball specialist. He's a phenomenal crosser, and just the volume of deliveries will lead to chances. But you've got to use Ugarkovic and Antonis as your main creative force deeper in the build-up, and they seem to be enthralled to the whims of Dimitri Petratos playing in that number 10 role. I would like to see he and Rami Najarine switch and Petratos play on a flank, even if it's on the left-hand side. I didn't think Abini offered much either. So some teething problems for the Wanderers, as we expected. Ugarkovic and Antonis, I think, will be a good partnership if they're giving the platform upon which to...
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? Is that later on in that game, of course, the other person who adds to that midfield conundrum, Jack Rodwell, came on and had a shot that nearly went in. That's been replayed very many times over the internet. So
I wonder whether Rodwell playing in a 4-3-3 with Ugarkovic and Antonis might actually lead to a more balanced midfield. With Ugarkovic as the 6, Rodwell is sort of box-to-box player. Don't know if he has that in his legs anymore. That's certainly, Everton Jack Rodwell was the box-to-box man. But, maybe he has to play deeper now.
Has Antonis got the capacity to be that sort of creative player consistently?
I think so. Terry Antonis, I have a lot of time for him. I think he's a wonderful talent. And if he's given the scope and the freedom to be your main playmaker wherever he is on the field, I think he will deliver. But at the moment, playing in a double pivot, there's a little bit too much defensive responsibility on Antonis's shoulders. I still like him there. I still think the team has improved with him present, but it doesn't bring the best out of him.
Yeah, I think that's really the summary here, is that those two can play well together, but I think the pH balance elsewhere in the team was maybe a little bit off. But the problem for those midfielders, and I think in many respects for the fans watching online and the $24,000 Bankwest who were all in fine voice, was that midfielders like Terry Antonis and Steven Ugarkovic could barely string more than 3 or 4 passes together in this game because it was so cagey. Like UFC level,
It was a cage match.
UFC level cagey. There were so many physical tackles thrown in that it was honestly hard to get a stretch of consistent, coherent football. And I'm all for the aggression, but it did make this one a bit of a slugfest at times.
Yeah, I agree. Suvla coming through on the Twitch comments, which is the best place to interact with us live.
Absolutely.
Shorter delay means we can incorporate your input into the stream. And Suvla says, yet another reason that derbies should not be played in round one. Game was very flat. 2 teams who ended up settling for not losing rather than trying to win. I think that is absolutely spot on. And I know the conference system means that the local teams are going to have to play each other sooner rather than later. But week one, we've had so many examples of round one of the A-League and the big fixture. not delivering. I remember when it was Brett Edmonton versus Harry Kewell in the Big Blue round 1, and it was a total damn squib.
I could name more than one. I could also name, I think it might even have been Harry Kewell's first game for Melbourne Heart against Melbourne Victory. I think it was round 1 at Etihad, might have been round 2, but any of those early stage derbies, it was a 0-0.
The A-League rarely starts with a bang. I don't know why that is. I think teams have so much turnover and so many new coaches and so forth. And there's a general conservatism in Australian football as well, but amplified when it's the first game and you don't want to lose in week 1. But having 3 derbies, the F3 delivered. I have to admit, the F3 did deliver.
The F3
in terms
shouldered
of
the other two,
but
comfortably.
The Westgate and the Sydney derby were very underwhelming. And it would have been easy to avoid the Sydney derby in week 1 by having, MacArthur play Central Coast and Newcastle play Western Sydney. MacArthur play Western Sydney and then Sydney play Central Coast, something like that. Some configuration of the 6 teams currently playing in New South Wales could have avoided these big fixtures week 1 and given these teams who are still gelling with so many new players a chance to actually deliver some entertainment when it came to the big game.
Yeah, well, I agree with what you're saying, and I think the Twitch has raised a really good point, and it's one that we discussed at some links in the press box during the Battle of the Bridge, and we'll get into that game shortly. But it's like this sort of weird juxtaposition where we're taking this line of argument that, well, these teams need to be in derby games. Like, we've got a league that is generally a great league, but when it comes to concepts of risk, can be a little bit, hesitant, a bit risk averse now and again. Losing on the opening day, plenty of new managers under pressure as well. Like Carl Robinson doesn't. The one thing he wants to do in that opening game against Sydney FC is just not lose. And probably the same for John Aloisi, of course. Same for Tony Popovich, probably. Just the objective for all 3 of those managers would be don't lose. Of course. Victory did get the edge in the end, but the weird thing is we've got that position, but also at the same time we've had a huge off season. Like it sort of boggles your mind that we're sort of like, it's true we shouldn't be playing these games now, but also you can't help but feel like the team should be ready to play these games, handbrake off, carefree, fully gelled together nicely.
I mean, there are reasons for that.
The
COVID situation made it difficult, especially here in Victoria, for teams to organise friendly matches against NPL sides because, it's community sport in the NPL and you don't get those exceptions. So there are reasons why, we haven't got that match fitness and sharpness going yet. And also just the short-term contracts in the A-League, the massive turnover of players doesn't help with that kind of consistency either. But to this extent, to see Western United and Melbourne Victory go out there with such a rigid approach, no real idea of how they were going to construct moves, so many long balls. It was absolute dross, I thought, at GMHBA.
Well, I summarised it in our little run sheet this way, Josh. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't particularly convincing, and it wasn't that coherent either, but it was a win. And I feel like the Tony Popovich era for Melbourne Victory probably couldn't have started any other way than that. Like, it wasn't good, but at the same time, is this not the approach and the style and the game state that Tony Popovich has made his sort of managerial career out of? It was an ugly game, but Popper has ugly games, and he excels in... His teams excel in grinding out results in these games, and they got one set piece. It was a thumping header from Roderick Miranda. I think it was Jake Brimmer who sent the corner in. Like, it was a beautiful set piece. Really, the only bit of
moment of quality.
The only one of the main moments of quality. I think Connor Payne had a shot in the second half that was a nice move down the right hand side. I think from Josh Risdon, but that was it really.
Yeah. And it fell on Connor Payne's right foot, so he's never going to score.
But this all felt very, very Popper, did it not?
Yeah, it was classic Popper. I didn't enjoy watching it. I felt as if there was no inclination of either central midfielder from Victory, be it Marchand or Broxham, to play ahead of the ball ever, or make themselves available for a pass even when the centre-backs had it. It just wasn't very progressive in terms of playing out from the back, just basic stuff like that. It's just so many long balls. And it was an absolute carpet at GMHBA. So
The ball should have been staying on the deck.
Yeah, exactly. It was a beautiful
deserved
deck
to
to be
stay on the
played on.
deck.
For Aloisi, I think it is probably more concerning. I felt as if Neil Kilkenny was slowing the game down quite a bit because he was attempting to coach his teammates while he was in possession and trying to... You talk about a midfield general, but I think you can take it too far when you're literally pointing at your teammates and telling them where to go while you have the ball, while you're about to be being closed down and the ball just seriously needs to be moved on, within the next couple of seconds. It was quite infuriating to watch. And then he would inevitably turn his back to the player who was pressing him and play back to a fullback or his centre half. So it ended up being Tomoki Imai and Leo Lacroix's job to bring the ball out from the back on quite a few occasions and actually dribble past their midfielders and into the final third. And Tomoki Imai, I think, nearly got a nosebleed when he got up there. He should have shot, but he just wasn't on his radar that he could score from outside the box. So, it was the way Victory were defending. They were letting Western United centre-backs have the ball, but Western United seemed to have no answer to it. And it is early days, but it was underwhelming. And Victory, they've got this existing dormant fan base, and if they're competitive again and they win again, they've been so starved of success, I think they will bring the fans back, whether it's ugly or otherwise. But for John Aloisi and Western United, they're trying to attract new fans, and playing the way they did on the weekend, despite John Aloisi trying to sell it post-match and saying that he was happy with certain aspects of it.
And he did sell it very well.
He was pretty convincing, as he always is. He's a great media performer, but it didn't ring true to me. And anyone who watched that and came to a game for the first time, I hope they're coming back, but I'm not sure if they will.
Is that down to less about the fact of the style that Aloisi is choosing to, the direction he's choosing to take this team in? Is it less to do with that? I'm just throwing the question out there. And more to do with the fact that these two teams just cancelled each other out. Playing the same formation, harnessing similar ideas. Victory won the game, but in many ways I felt like that result was unfair on Western United, which is not to say that Western United were good, but I just don't think that either team particularly played that well, and both cancelled each other out.
It deserved to be a draw.
Yeah,
a nil draw.
I think the win for Victory, it doesn't necessarily remove that, these same sort of problems that you're identifying with Aloisi. I don't think the win for Victory necessarily absolves them of that same critical lens. But I do get the point that you're making about Kilkenny. I thought in particular as well, because he was doing so much of that long ball distribution from deep, it kind of felt like it stepped on Diamante's toes maybe just a little bit, because he does sometimes like to drop short. He does play those balls in over the top, and his influence in the game grew as time went on. But I thought particularly in the first 20, 30 minutes, he was often really, really tight to Dylan Wenzel-Halls and to the other attacking players up there, and seemed a little bit isolated at times. And I think when he was in that, obviously he can play a good ball on the deck and is just generally good with his feet, but he is known for those kind of, and revered by a lot of people in Australian footballing circles for those sprayed passes. And it kind of felt like maybe, they were just getting in each other's way in that regard. Maybe it's an intention to leave Dia further up the pitch.
I think it is.
Sure.
I think it's because John Aloisi will have told him, we want you to impact the game in the final third because you've got quality.
Yeah.
And, final ball is really good, and he can score goals. He doesn't score that many, but he can provide that final pass. And the problem was he just wasn't getting the ball in the first half because he was up there. They were basically playing 4-4-2 with Diamante up front. That's what it looked. I know it's a 4-2-3-1 on paper, but a lot of these 4-2-3-1s in the A-League end up playing like 4-2-2-2 or 4-4-2, sort of Sydney style. And Diamante just couldn't get the ball. I don't know if he was presenting for it enough, but certainly this service from deep wasn't coming his way. And I get what you mean in terms of that Kilkenny-Dia axis, but I think that is theoretically the right way to use Diamante, because he was dropping too deep under Redan and slowing the game down because he was dropping all the way into midfield, demanding the ball, taking a touch, setting himself, then long sprayed switch, and the defence had already adjusted across and seen it coming a mile away. So getting him more involved higher up the park probably makes the most of his skill set, but then you do have to get him involved. So you need another solution there. And Western United, at least at this early stage, don't have it yet.
Yeah, and I think maybe the other thing to consider with having Dia as high up the pitch as he was is probably a loading thing as well. Like the physical aspect of having to drop deep to receive and then make your way up into the final third for someone of Diamante's vintage probably plays in. Because Aloisi was quite frank with us in the press conference that Dia's not going to play every game. And that's not because that's not an issue of intent. It's not an issue of ability.
He's just old.
He's just old. He's just old. And
there'll be a bit of rotation, and maybe a guy who's dominated in MPL3 whenever he's played as a number 10 in Nicholas Milanovic could see some minutes. And that's quite exciting because young players at number 10, much like at number 9, don't get many opportunities in the A-League. Those are usually the purview of the highly paid visa players. And I'm really excited about what Milanovic brings. But Suvla in the Twitch comments confirming my hypothesis about Victory fans, saying, as a Victory fan, after the last 2 seasons, seeing a team so defensively organised under Popper was unreal. In a Dower game, defence reigned supreme and we nicked a win with some key players missing. Can't complain, really. And, of course, Brillante didn't start. That was a big out on the eve of the game. But that's it. Grant Brebner couldn't organise a defence, clearly. No. And they've been disorganised for 2 seasons now and haven't been able to convert from set pieces at all. It was as if they didn't practice them. Victory had a shocking record in terms of scoring off set pieces. So to see those 2 things fall in their favour for once and see that the coaching staff has actually been working on defensive structure and defensive shape just to be competent enough to stay in a game so that you can get lucky and nick something is a welcome change for Victory fans. And, with Roderick Miranda looking like a hit early on, not just because he scored a goal, but because he defended really well, with Ivan Keleva, who admittedly didn't have much to do, but he
looked mighty fine doing it.
He did. And
in the orange skins and huge pipes.
Running the length of the field to celebrate a goal and taking a selfie with every fan who asked and giving his jersey away.
Also gave his shirt away to beloved FNL listener Brenton Ray. That was very
good on you,
wholesome.
Brenton, for getting
but that was,
jersey.
I think you make a good point. Like, it's just been such a long time since that defense has looked solid for Victory that it's. I look at the forward, the front third of this pitch as an area for Victory that can still improve with time because, obviously, as you mentioned, players are missing. Margiotta looked good when he came on, but Daggers beforehand was pretty invisible.
He was terrible. Not just invisible, Lockie. I thought he had a shocking game. I thought he couldn't control a simple pass. It was one of those days where, strikers touches a trampoline and the ball just doesn't stick. And Daggers, we know, is really good in the air. He takes those long throws. But as a hold-up player, he's got a lot of work to do. And, he's only ever going to be a backup at Victory when Margiotta is fit. And he looked really energetic off the bench, like he really wanted to make an impact, and that's good to see.
Yeah, and I think his movement just made him instantly so much more involved in the brief cameo that he made. But that end of the pitch can be improved. And there's still so many fun pieces for Victory to be able to play with, of course,
Rojas, Cruz,
there's plenty more that can be done there.
Nishan Velopile looked pretty handy.
He did look
I think he's still a sub. I think he's still a super sub
but a handy one to have nevertheless.
Yeah, definitely. But his main attribute is his pace, and when the game opens up, I think he can play a really important role this season.
But that's the thing for Victory is that can be changed, but the fundamental thing that they've been lacking for so long, as you said, is that solid base in defence. And they got that, and not only did they get that, they got the result. And, they got that great scenes at the end with the travelling fans who came in great numbers celebrating. And all of that part of it, even though it wasn't pretty, even though it wasn't perfect, was stuff that Victory have been missing for a very, very long time. And I think they are at a point where the way they get it doesn't necessarily matter all too much anymore.
Win at all costs, and the fans will love it because it's been a long time between drinks for the Victory.
Yeah, well, Melbourne Victory getting off on the right foot. Speaking of right foot, one player who's got a very, very impressive one is the big Perth Glory signing, Daniel Sturridge. We'll talk about his glorious, beautiful 9-minute cameo on the other side of this break.
Are you looking to change your destiny in life? Be your own boss? Start your own business? If you are, you need people who understand your needs and are committed to helping you make it happen. At DKP & Co Chartered Accountants, we are more than just accountants. We are business advisors, taxation consultants, and strategists that specialise in setting up businesses. We understand the client and give them the very best customised advice and strategies to achieve their goals. Visit our website dkpco.com.au or give us a call today on 03 9023 9370. Fast, proactive, personal. That's DKP & Co Chartered Accountants.
Whether you're a land developer, in local government or a service authority, Lenco Group will help you get your job done on time and in a cost-effective manner. Lenco Group provides superior civil engineering and advisory services by creating, communicating and delivering sustainable, efficient solutions. For all your infrastructure requirements associated with residential, commercial or industrial development projects, visit our website lencogroup.com.au or give us a call today on 1300 152 626.
Are you looking to change your destiny in life? Be your own boss? Start your own business? If you are, you need people who understand your needs and are committed to helping you make it happen. At DKP & Co Chartered Accountants, we are more than just accountants. We are business advisors, taxation consultants, and strategists that specialise in setting up businesses. We understand the client and give them the very best customised advice and strategies to achieve their goals. Visit our website dkpco.com.au or give us a call today on 03 9023 9370. Fast, proactive, personal. That's DKP & Co Chartered Accountants.
Vickery looking to build. Barbarouses is quick. Is he in behind Topo Stanley? It doesn't matter! Costa Barbarouses! Wow!
Like a salmon, a spawning salmon. And Diamanti again. Oh, he's done it!
Unbelievable kick. Mamma mia.
We are back here on the Oz Football Hour, taking you through round one of the A-League men's, and we're really getting into the juicy part of the round here. I mean, the first three games were a little bit fizzly, but this back end, the other three games we've got to go through in the back half of the show, is where the heat really does start to turn on. And speaking of heat, the next game we're going through was in the west of Australia. A game, Perth Glory taking on Adelaide United. It ended one apiece, but the headlines were dominated, and the game totally revolved around the efforts and involvement of a single striker wearing purple. Yes, I am talking, of course, about Bruno Fornaroli. His beautiful, beautiful goal that got his side a point in this game at out there in Perth.
I've heard his skin folds tests aren't great though. So they should probably look into it, maybe consider benching him for the entire season.
Joyce Parish.
I think he would be better off drinking Marseille in the stand. No, sorry, I'm actually Josh Parish, not Warren Joyce. So Fornaroli, baller, what a strike.
I don't know can we say, like, has Bruno Fornaroli been around and been involved in this league enough that I can use the phrase vintage Fornaroli?
I think so.
Can I do that?
I think it...
Because this really was, like... I will openly out myself as the number one ticket holder of the Bruno Fornaroli fan club. Wherever that guy goes, I just think he's an incredible player, and not just for the goals that he scores, but the way he incorporates the players around him. I've really haven't seen many other players that are able to do it.
Well, you, of course, are the founder of the Prickly Pears, the Australian Bruno Fornaroli supporters group.
Name of my five-a-side team. No, it's not actually. But it's not a bad idea. I'll keep it in the notebook. But... yeah, that swiveling touch, it was this pirouetting first touch that did two things at once. Like, it wasn't just a control of the ball, but it was also a turn and face, all in one movement. It actually reminded me of, I think, the first goal that he ever scored for Melbourne City against Melbourne Victory in the derby. He had a defender behind him and took this first touch where he rolled around the defender at the same time and managed to poke it past Lawrence Thomas. It was just an absolute ripper.
That was phenomenal. He's a gem. I'm so glad he's still in the league. I'm so glad he didn't go, back to Europe or to the Middle East or wherever when the City thing turned completely sour. I'm in awe of some of his contributions when it comes to incorporative play, combining with the midfield, playing with his back to goal, but also just sheer South American flair. That strike was absolutely pitch perfect. It was a peach, and it really lit up the game. Daniel Sturridge nowhere to be seen until the 85th minute, so at least the 18,000 crammed into the shed and Perth Glory's home stadium had something to cheer about.
But God, it was good to see 18,000 of them though. I feel like it's been a while since we've seen HBF Park look really like.
But it's all Sturridge hype. This is the short-term sugar hit that marquees bring. I know a lot of people deride it, but they wouldn't have got 18,000 if it wasn't for Sturridge. I hope they'll come back. Just because they only saw him for a few minutes. I hope people realise that he will be hopefully playing, full 60s and 90s later on in the season. But they won't be going back to NIB Stadium for some week. So I hope they don't lose the momentum and the hype that he's generated over the course of those games.
I know it's a long season, and obviously Daniel Sturridge is but 1 week and one haircut out of quarantine, so still fairly not particularly fresh. Well, physically, obviously the hair is looking extremely fly, but that's another.
Your hair is looking pretty fly at the moment.
I wouldn't say that. Studge, if you know a barber, I'm willing to travel. If Mark, Mr. McGowan will let me in, I'd be more than happy to partake in the services of that particular barber. But I know there are physical considerations. It is a long season. There is so much time more for Daniel Sturridge to be playing. But do you think this was a wise manoeuvre by Richie Garcia to limit, with those, increased sugar hit fans coming in drinking the very sugary Sturridge Kool-Aid? I think it was a wise decision to give him just 9 minutes in this game.
Yeah, including
in terms of
stoppage time.
Bringing those fans back.
I give him 15. Come on, Richie Garcia, the spoiled sport. I mean, it was 1-1. You don't have to defend with all 11 players. Surely he could have chilled there up front for a few minutes and it wouldn't have affected his physical preparation. Maybe he was utterly unprepared after 2 weeks of quarantine to really perform, and that was just
15 minutes of Sturridge, but he is absolutely gassed after about 7. So you get 7 minutes of decent play time, but you're seeing him more and wondering what might happen. Or are you happy with a 9-minute burst?
Wow.
I feel like I take the 15.
Yeah, I think just seeing him on the field, all the kids there, seeing his name on the back of his jersey and seeing him run around with his new haircut. He was apparently good after the match, coming up to fans for selfies and so forth. I wasn't so impressed with the kids who'd used it as an opportunity for clout chasing to ask him why he hadn't scored and video him when it was, feigning to take a picture. I mean, I know I'm the grandpa here at the station now, but it does feel like the technology is corrupting our youth, Lockie. I wasn't impressed with that behaviour. But anyway, this guy is going to bring so many eyeballs to the league regardless of his performance levels, because the Sturridge travelling circus is going to be a hype machine of its own, just from his reputation and his social media presence and so forth. But look, I would take the 15 minutes. If they thought genuinely, even bringing him on for 5 is a risk of injury, then maybe that's why Richard Garcia took the approach that he took. But yeah, it is a little bit disappointing for those fans who paid so much money to come out and see him that they only saw a brief glimpse.
I think it wouldn't be so, as you sort of intimated before, it wouldn't be so bad if Perth weren't staring down the barrel of such a long time away from having another home game. If they were playing again in 2 weeks' time, it'd be fine. The other things around the corner. But you need to capitalize on that momentum. I remember this sort of similar thing with, obviously not the same caliber of player, doesn't stimulate the Euro snob market quite the same. But Timmy Cahill brought those kind of bumps right at the very start. But as things went on, it just kind of tapered off. And part of that was to do with the football that Melbourne City were playing at the time. There were other issues, but once that momentum started to sort of sap off, the people who were there for Timmy and Timmy alone didn't come back. And so you have to capitalize on that momentum as much as you can. And a 9-minute cameo in a 1-1 draw when you've got such a long away trip to come, doesn't really do that.
We're trying to sort of interpret the psyche of the supporters and the parents who paid the money and so forth.
Would have been a great time for
not a cheap ticket.
Some outside of stadium vox pops.
Yeah, it would have been.
Ask what fans thought of that.
Definitely. I hope somebody did that. I'll have to dig around for some of those Perth Glory fan channels and so forth. But they won't be playing another home game until mid-January, as you say. Talking about the Cahill example and this, I think there is a certain extent to which those supporters who come right at the very beginning are theatre goers, going to say that they've been and are only going to come to one or two games because they're just not the kind of diehard fans who are going to buy a season ticket. And just one player being in town is not going to convince them to change that habit. If they haven't signed on as a member after, 15, 16 years of the A-League and however many years of Perth Glory's existence, are they going to be suddenly converted now by the presence of one star player? I don't know. So that's the counter argument.
I guess,
how much is this worth long term?
Yeah.
Obviously, it's a big whack of money on the night, and I'm sure in January, because there's so long between games, they'll get another big crowd. But whether it holds for the season is another matter entirely.
Certainly an interesting narrative to follow on to. But for example, the circus, it only comes around to your local area once every few months. If the circus was there every week, you probably wouldn't go.
Yeah,
every time the circus comes down once every 3 months, you're like, yeah, I'll go down. It's a circus,
Yeah.
It's illusions.
When's the last time you went to the circus?
Okay, no, but I'm talking about as the kind of person you might be interested in a Sturridge Sugar Hit, as a younger fan, perhaps, you might be like, grouse, the circus, it's here
you
again.
don't buy a season ticket to Cirque du Soleil.
If the circus
it's
was
novelty
there,
value.
if the circus was there every week, you wouldn't necessarily go.
That's true.
So it's a good point. But hopefully for the sake of Richie Garcia, because that HBF Park, when it has fans in, it cultivates a really good atmosphere. The place sounded great, and this was a pretty entertaining game, and it was definitely aided by the fact that there were so many people there. So that's in a time where crowds are very fluctual, very disparate. We saw some good ones this week. We saw some bad ones. Having that support can make a big difference. Momentum, confidence, all those sort of things really do. Those intangibles count for a lot in the A-League, especially when there is so much tactical similarity. So I hope they can stick around because it'll be a real boon to Perth as they go, further into the season.
And the Shed, underrated in terms of active groups around the country. When it's full,
I think
when it's pumping, it's possibly the best atmosphere in the league. Maybe only second to, I guess, Wanderers and Victory, the two groups that you put in the conversation. But both of those have dipped in recent seasons. The Shed could establish themselves as the most intimidating and best atmosphere in the competition if these crowds hold and if Perth Glory deliver on the pitch. I saw plenty of warning signs and question marks. This 5-4-1 that they went out with. I liked the look of Anthony Burke-Gilroy at right wing back. Looks like a good signing. But the midfield combination, again, I'm not sure how they're going to get Sturridge and Fornaroli the ball when they inevitably both play together.
I mean, I wonder, because purely for the fact that I think Keogh is the one who has to go straight out, unfortunately, because as we sort of said at the start, Fornaroli is just so incorporative. He just needs to be there to facilitate what goes on around him, and Sturridge is included in that. So I guess there's an argument to be made that he could function as a 10. I think he was given that role a few times when he was having that weird period towards the end of his Melbourne City career. It didn't necessarily work because to really play in the heart of that midfield, it requires a little bit more sort of ticker, and Warren Joyce would have said that that's something that Bruno Fornaroli really didn't have. So that is one option. Sardinero, I guess, is another that's been touted. Whether or not that actually happens is another matter altogether. But
because he hasn't played there. He's a striker / winger. Yeah. He's never played as a 10. Maybe he can reinvent himself, but he's 29.
Richie Garcia will have to
31
to figure it out, if for no other reason than to service the fans of the Shed. As Adam Papalia said, it was standing room only in the Shed, and I think standing room only was the sign that read atop Ben Halloran's shoulders in this game to bring it over to an Adelaide perspective for just a few minutes, because Ben Halloran, I hate to lean too heavily on the words and the teachings of Ante Jukic, but he really was the alpha and omega for Adelaide United in this game.
Yeah, he's in a contract year, and I think he's going to really dominate in this season. But will it be enough for Adelaide? I'm not sure. I think they have a lot of recyclers and conservative players in the midfield. But, Lockie, we've only got a couple of minutes left in the show, so we should shout out the F3 Derby, the most entertaining game this weekend, and dig in a little bit into the MacArthur to Campbelltown Stadium pitch situation before we go.
Yes. Which one do you want to start with?
Let's go Newcastle.
The good or the bad and the ugly?
It was just great viewing, classic A-League F3 derby, chaos end to end. Newcastle with a really entertaining contingent of foreign players and a really attacking philosophy. A couple of mistakes getting found out by a Central Coast side with Josh Nisbet up front. It was clearly designed to pounce on those mistakes. So Newcastle are going to be incredibly volatile this season. I love Becca Mikkeltadze for that reason. He sort of is emblematic of the entire team.
I mean, like Fornaroli a little bit, like incorporative.
Yeah. All over, dropping deep. He's really dynamic. He's screaming at the refs. He's going to probably have some kind of high-profile bust-up in a change room with somebody. But he's great. He's so much fun. And Pena will literally shoot from anywhere. They've got some characters in this side. I think they've got some cult heroes in the making. And whether they win or lose, Newcastle games are going to be appointment viewing for me.
Yeah, well, I think they were a little bit like that in seasons gone by. They haven't there's been plenty of times where they haven't necessarily been the best team, but they are like a team that has to be watched. Like even last year, there were so many patches across the season. They were good value, and I think they look, at least on the basis of this game, they were unlucky not to get a point, not to get potentially more. Of course, they really undid themselves with some of the errors that they made. But yeah, certainly I think if you're buying into Jets coin, you've got to get in contact with Danny Townsend to get some of those. But
I think you have to contact the council, the Brains Trust, of 3 or 4 different A-League clubs who are running Newcastle now.
Look, maybe we wouldn't go all in on Jets coin, but maybe
it's volatile. It's going to have some peaks and troughs, much like real cryptocurrency.
Maybe just by 1 or 2. But yeah, all the visa signings looked exciting in this game. Daniel Pena, as you said, you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. Or if you're Daniel Pena in the league, you miss 100% of the shots that you have taken so far. But
hey, he scored in the FFA Cup.
It's true. That's why I made the clarification
in the league.
But he will be so exciting. So too the rest of them. Roll on the Newcastle Jets and roll on the young talent that continues to come out of the Central Coast Mariners as well. I'm eagerly awaiting to see who continues to step up and fill that void for the Stensness and the Qualls that have parted ways.
Yeah, Central Coast. I didn't see anything that I haven't seen from them before, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think they're building on the axis and the system that Stajic left there. Whether it works against a team who takes less risks than Newcastle do, it remains to be seen. But, Lockie, before we go, we should talk about this game that was moved to McDonald Jones Stadium. MacArthur won, Wellington Phoenix won in the pouring rain. Craig Noon playing at right wing back, but it was more about where the game wasn't happening that was the story. How on earth in week 1 have we got to this situation where you've got an unplayable cow paddock at Campbelltown Stadium? How did they not know until Friday? This is totally unprofessional.
This is what blows my mind. There are a lot of people involved in the running of a football club. Like if you've ever been behind the scenes on a match day, there's a lot of people kicking about doing different things. Surely there is one member of staff who lives in the area, who's nearby, who's like going, they walk home or they walk to the train station or something goes by Campbelltown Stadium and they just had a cursory glance, just I'll have a little look at the place I'll be working this year. Oh, that doesn't look great. No one did that,
and I don't know when it got torn up. That's the question. But there's so many unanswered.
But it's not even the fact that no one checked. It's the fact that the council who, I think it was the council who, or maybe the stadium.
There's also like a turf contractor.
Yeah.
The council apparently decided to lay ready to play turf at a really late stage.
But how could these things be communicated without the singular, at least to the best of my knowledge at the present moment, singular tenant of the place not knowing?
It's bizarre because it seems like they have a great relationship with the council because the council are letting them use the stadium for literal peppercorn rent.
The peppercorn rate.
They're paying $1.
You literally couldn't pay less than that in dollar terms.
I guess
it's as cheap as it can be.
I guess you get what you pay for, apparently.
Yeah.
I feel bad for MacArthur fans. There's not that much noise about this because, of course, there's still very much a fledgling
just
club.
a few sad cowbells.
Yeah, just a few ringing the bell and chanting shame like they're in Game of Thrones, I think, outside the Campbelltown Council. But, look, Milicic, very prescriptive in his philosophy, and I think Danny De Silva and Ulysses Davila might get frustrated by the speed at which they're asked to move the ball on.
I think in the context of the stadium issues, that's what made this game so frustrating for me because
there was zero atmosphere.
Well, there was zero atmosphere. You can talk about all the off-field stuff as well, but this game just raised more questions than it answered about MacArthur for me over the course of this season. Like, they've got all these wonderful as you were getting to there, they've got all these wonderful dribbling players who can carry with the ball at feet. They've brought in some of the best, if not the best in the league at doing this, and it looks like they're going to be constrained to play a pass-first system. And it didn't work. They drew the game on the weekend against a Wellington side who not many people have, with the losses they've sustained, predicted that favourably. But Wellington were the better side in this game and arguably were unlucky not to win the game. On a weekend where there was not a single team who could have used a good news story more than MacArthur, this was, for me, I know it was still a draw, but this was not the performance that you wanted to put out.
No, and, Wellington Phoenix are favourites for most people to finish near the bottom of the table. I was encouraged by some of the stuff I saw from them, but it's all in the context of MacArthur running into blind alleys and playing this very sterile brand of possession football where Craig Noon, playing at right wing back as a left footer, is the only player allowed to dribble, and he's narrowing the field all the time. It was so frustrating to watch. They need an overlapping fullback or maybe, Sheffield United style overlapping centre-back to provide width there.
I think this
doesn't work.
Yeah, I think it's something to pay attention to over the course of the season, though, because I wonder what direction this goes. Like, we know Milicic has been so steadfast in his principles and in his beliefs throughout his managerial career so far.
Well, he did make an adjustment last year. He changed to a back three.
But, is this... in terms of what players are given the scope to do on the ball and off the ball as well.
It's like a possession drill. It's like two-touch.
Yeah, but, I think this is going to be one of the things to watch. Does Milicic over the course of this season cling steadfastly to these principles and we see these players fitting into a square peg round hole situation, or does having those players with the skills at feet that they've got force a switch? If we can, or if he can be sort of managed and persuaded into maybe allowing a bit more handbrake off play, if I can use that phrase, and giving those players a bit more scope to do what it is that over the course of multiple A-League seasons they have done so well, this could turn out very, very well for MacArthur. But this was not a great first impression of how all these star-studded players, some of the best in the league that have been brought in, what they can do for this team and for the fans.
We have to go, Lockie, but that to me was like watching late-era Louis van Gaal's Manchester United, with players playing out of position, evenly spaced across the pitch,
actually,
and playing this ball-dominant style that just didn't go anywhere. It just didn't create chances. And the players were so confused about the game plan. They didn't seem to be able to make any of their own decisions. I find it very difficult to watch, and I think it's an indictment on MacArthur if they can't make, much like Western Sydney, a very much a star-studded collection of players work well together and do what they do best. So remains to be seen whether they'll play another home game anytime soon on the cow paddock. The Bulls, funnily enough, with a home stadium that looks fit for livestock. But it also remains to be seen whether they can deliver what they should with the resources at their disposal, because they're spending a lot of money clearly on the salaries and the big name players that they've brought in. They've been very aggressive with their recruitment, but if it's this dull and this sterile, I don't think they're going to be successful in terms of results, and I don't think they're going to bring in new fans in terms of entertainment.
Yeah, well, in summary, Josh, I think round one of the A-League men's raised a lot more questions for many teams and really the league itself than it answered, but I know that both you and I and everyone watching at home will be devoted to answering those questions as the footballing and A-League men's and even the A-League women's season when it rolls around, the revolution continues. And
Speaking
hopefully
of which,
to be fully televised. Speaking of televised.
yeah, speaking of women's football, we've got Radio Dub coming up next with Pakua Frimpong, so stick around for that.
Vickery looking to build. Barbarouses is quick. Is he in behind Topo Stanley? It